I'd been in Austin for a few days, visiting some old friends. The drive from Louisiana was long, but manageable. On my last day there, I got a message from Tom, an old high school buddy I hadn't seen in years. He'd replied to one of my Instagram stories, casually asking when I was heading out. I told him, today. Tom said he lived just an hour outside the city on my route home. It felt spontaneous, but also like fate. How often do you get the chance to reconnect after so long? I agreed to stop by. The GPS said it'd take about an hour and a half. As I pulled into his driveway, something about the place struck me. It wasn't rundown, just untouched. Like time had forgotten it. The wooden porch creaked beneath my steps, and when Tom opened the door, I was hit with the scent of aged wood and something musky, like a cabin sealed tight for decades. Tom greeted me like no time had passed. We hugged, laughed, swapped stories. Inside, his home was like stepping into a photograph from the 70s. Faded furniture, creaky hardwood floors, a quiet stillness in the air. We drank whiskey and caught up as the sun dipped lower. One glass turned into a few too many. The room grew smaller, cozier, and somehow heavier. Eventually, he offered for me to stay the night. I wasn't in any condition to argue. When I asked about the couch, he shook his head and motioned down a short hallway. "The guest room's better," he said. We had some Chinese food delivered, and not long after I stumbled into the spare bedroom. I barely noticed the room's details. The haze of alcohol dulled everything. But I do remember how still the air felt, like no one had breathed in that room for years. The moment I hit the bed, I was out. Sometime in the night, I woke up. My mouth was dry, my head heavy. The room was cloaked in darkness, save for a sliver of moonlight leaking through the blinds. That's when I saw it. Something in the corner by the closet door. At first, it looked like a black trench coat hanging on a rack. But the shape was wrong. Too solid, too still. It had a wide upper portion like shoulders. Not fabric, something else. A silhouette. My chest tightened. I didn't remember seeing it before, but maybe I'd just missed it. I tried to dismiss it, rolled over, closed my eyes. "Just a coat," I whispered to myself. But I looked again. Still there, unmoving, watching. I shut my eyes and forced myself into sleep. I don't know how much time passed before I woke again. This time it wasn't thirst or a hangover that pulled me from sleep. It was a sound, a slow, deliberate creaking, like weight shifting on old wood. I froze. My eyes shot open. The first light of dawn crept into the room. I turned my head toward the corner, and the coat was gone. I shot up, my head swimming, my heart thudding against my ribs. The closet door stood open now. Nothing was there, nothing visible anyway. I threw the covers off and stumbled into the hallway, heart pounding like a war drum. I made my way to Tom's room. He was out cold, snoring, completely unaware of the icy panic rising in my chest. I shook him hard. It took effort to rouse him, but eventually he groaned and blinked awake, groggy and confused. "There was something in the room," I whispered, breathless. "The coat, the black one hanging by the closet. It looked like a person." Tom rubbed his eyes, still trying to process my words. "What coat?" he mumbled. "The trench coat. The one hanging on the closet door. It had shoulders, like someone was inside it," I said. Tom sat up straighter, now more alert. "I don't own a trench coat. I don't even have a coat rack in there." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, for some hint of a joke, but his face remained serious. Still groggy, he let out a sigh and followed me back down the hallway. I pointed to the corner. It was right there. He scratched his head, his frown deepening. "You sure you weren't dreaming or something?" "I was awake," I snapped, my voice trembling. "I woke up. It was there, then it wasn't." We stood in silence for a moment, both of us feeling the same oppressive weight settle in the room again. The air was still, too still, like it was listening. Tom finally exhaled and nodded. "Let's check the place, just to be sure." We searched the entire house, every room, every closet, even the basement. Nothing. No strange coats. No sign of anyone but us, and no signs of forced entry. Tom eventually tried to convince me it was a dream, a side effect of the alcohol, a trick of the light, something. I wanted to believe him. Really, I did. Because the alternative? It was something I couldn't explain. Something that chilled me more than the night air ever could. As soon as the sun had fully risen, I packed my things, muttered a half-hearted goodbye, and got in my car. I hated leaving him alone after what happened, but I couldn't stay there a minute longer. The whole drive home, my thoughts kept circling back to that dark figure, the way it stood there, watching, silent, still, and then gone. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe Tom was messing with me in some sick way, but if he was, he's never admitted it, even years later. Or maybe, just maybe, there was someone in that house, and they decided to leave before morning. The car sat at the far end of the gravel lot, old, weathered and empty. It looked abandoned. Something about it felt off. It was evening by then, and there wasn't a soul at the beach or hiking nearby. Still, I brushed off the unease. We pitched our tents close together, my parents in one, Anna and I in the other. It took longer than we thought, but eventually we got everything set up. Anna and I curled up inside, made it cozy, watched YouTube, munched on snacks. We were trying to keep it chill. It was just after midnight when we decided to sleep. My parents were already out cold, but Anna and I were still scrolling through TikTok when we heard it. A sharp, metallic clatter, like a shovel slamming onto gravel. We both froze. The sound came from the direction of that abandoned car. Too scared to peek out, we stayed still, quiet. Then we heard something being tossed into a trunk, a dull thunk, followed by the unmistakable slam of it closing. Seconds later, tires skidded on gravel. The car peeled out of the lot like someone fleeing the scene. My hands trembled as I texted a friend from a nearby city. I told him where we were. His reply hit me like a punch to the gut. That beach? Yeah, that area's sketchy. Organized crime sometimes uses it for shady stuff. We had no idea. As that message sank in, everything went quiet again. Too quiet. About 10 minutes passed. We were just starting to breathe again when it happened. A scream, a blood-curdling, inhuman scream from deep in the forest. It was a man's voice, full of agony and terror. It cut through the night like a blade. We both bolted upright, too scared to speak. I immediately texted my mom. No response. So I called. She finally answered, groggy and confused. "What scream?" she asked. She and my dad hadn't heard a thing. I couldn't believe it. That scream had shaken the earth. Anna and I huddled under the blankets, our bodies rigid with fear. Minutes crawled by. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate, crunching the gravel. Someone was walking around our tent. We sat up, barely breathing. I killed my phone screen to keep the glow from giving us away. The footsteps moved past us, then circled my parents' tent, then around the car. Then silence, but not peace. The same car, the same one from earlier, came back. Its headlights swept across our tent walls. We dropped flat, praying whoever it was couldn't see inside. I dared to peek through the tiny tent window. I saw the door slam. Then the car peeled out again. Gone. Relief trickled in, but I couldn't shake the tension in my chest. I kept watching the road. 5 minutes later, another vehicle sped into view. This one had sirens. A police car. It raced in the same direction the other car had gone. Nothing else happened that night, but we couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching us. We climbed into the car and locked the doors. It felt safer, even if only a little. Anna eventually fell asleep. I didn't. I stayed up until dawn, staring into the trees, listening for anything. When exhaustion finally won, we slipped back into the tent and collapsed. The sun was rising, and the forest? It was silent. Too silent. Completely drained, I finally told my mom everything that had happened. She listened carefully, her face going pale when I finished. "I heard them too," she whispered. I stared at her, confused. "The footsteps?" She nodded. "Yes, and when the person got near our tent, I heard heavy breathing. It was like the kind you hear in horror movies during a creepy phone call. I was terrified. But the worst part? My dad had slept through the whole thing. We had to explain everything to him, even though he'd missed the entire terrifying ordeal. Without hesitation, we packed up everything, our tents, our gear. None of us wanted to stay there another minute. The drive to the theme park was uneventful, and we tried to enjoy the day, but the memory of that night stuck with me like a shadow. Later that evening, curiosity got the better of me. I researched the forest where we had camped. What I found made my stomach drop. A man had been murdered there just a short time before our visit, stabbed to death, his death linked to gang-related debts. Even more chilling, 2 men had gone missing from that same beach and were never found. I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if the person walking around our tents was someone dangerous, checking to see if we'd seen anything? What if we had been in real danger without even realizing it? The scream, the footsteps, the heavy breathing. It all pointed to something far darker than we had imagined. To this day, I still think about that night. Who screamed in the woods? And what was someone doing with a shovel in the middle of the night? The police car racing after the other car? What exactly were they chasing? I guess I'll never know. Then, shifting to a memory from your childhood, here's the next part of your eerie tale. This is a story that still haunts me, even though I was so young when it happened. I was 6 at the time, around the age when childhood memories start becoming clearer. I have one sibling, my older brother Keith. He's 2 years older than me, so at the time, he was 8. Our dad was always strict, especially about our bedtime. 8:30 p.m., no exceptions. If we were caught up after that, we'd be in serious trouble. I don't remember if it was a school night or not, but I woke up in the middle of the night to Keith shaking me awake. I was confused, wondering why he was waking me up until he whispered urgently, "Be quiet, listen." I listened, and that's when I heard it. Our mom's voice, calling our names from downstairs. But it wasn't loud or normal. It was a whisper, a quiet, almost eerie whisper. I was about to get up to answer, but Keith stopped me. "Don't go," he whispered. "I don't think it's Mom." I didn't believe him. I was mad at him for trying to scare me. But he insisted, "Come here, listen." I reluctantly got up and went toward the bedroom door. Outside, the hallway led to the stairs and a bathroom, and to the right was the door to the stairway. My heart pounded as I pressed my ear against the door. I heard it clearer now. The voice, calling our names again. "Keith, Mikey." I told Keith, "That's Mom." But he shook his head. "No, it's not." Confused, I was the one who opened the door first, slowly, to avoid making noise. I crept toward the stairway door and cracked it open just enough to peek through. At the bottom of the stairs, I saw it, a silhouette, a woman. But something wasn't right. I knew immediately. It wasn't our Mom. She looked up, saw me and said, "Hi, sweetie, come down here." My heart stopped. I slammed the door shut and locked it, retreating back into our room. I locked that door too. Tears started to well up in my eyes. Keith kept saying, "I told you, I told you." We both agreed, then and there, we weren't going near that door again. We screamed as loud as we could, trying to wake our parents. On the count of 3, we stomped on the floor and screamed again, desperate to be heard. It didn't take long. Our parents barged up the stairs, pounding on the locked door. At first, our dad was furious about the door being locked, but as soon as we opened it, they saw the tears in my eyes and the genuine fear in both of us. They listened closely. My mom was particularly concerned, her voice softening. "I wasn't at the bottom of the stairs. I wasn't calling you," she said, her face pale. She asked what the woman had looked like, but we couldn't give her any details, just a vague sense of something wrong. Meanwhile, I remember our dad running downstairs, probably to search for the woman. After a while, my mom kissed us goodnight again, her tone serious. She told us to lock the doors, which was a first. I was too young to understand it all, but looking back, it seemed like our parents knew exactly who it might have been. Keith and I sat by the window, waiting, when we heard the doorbell. We saw a police car parked outside, and we wanted to go downstairs, but we stayed put. We begged our parents to tell us what had happened, who the woman was, but they always said they didn't know. They praised us for staying upstairs, for not going down. But something about their response seemed off. I have a feeling they knew exactly who it was. To spare Keith and me from any more fear, they just kept quiet. The last time I asked about it, over dinner, they just shrugged it off as some random intruder. But that never explained how that woman knew our names. The story shifts now, so here's how you can dive into the next part. This next story happened when I was 16, still in high school. Since I didn't have a car, I was dependent on my mom to drive me around, or I'd walk if it was close. It was a weekend, and my friend Haley was having some people over since her parents weren't home. My mom drove me to her place. It was only about a 3-minute drive or a 20-minute walk. At the time, my mom was single, and she'd often go out on dates. She told me to either walk home or catch a ride if she was out late. A few of my girlfriends were there, Tina, Courtney, and Belle. We hung out in Haley's backyard for a while until some boys from school showed up. The thing was, Haley hadn't told me they were coming. One of the boys was someone I had history with, and not the good kind. I didn't want to be around him, but Haley thought it would be cute to play matchmaker and try to get us to work things out. It was awkward. Eventually, I decided I didn't want to stick around. After all, it was late and I wasn't feeling the vibe. I left, letting Haley know how frustrated I was. She kept texting, asking me to come back and apologizing, but I just wanted to go home. I walked for about 5 minutes before slowing down. Something felt off. That's when I heard it. The sound of footsteps behind me. At first, I thought it was just me overthinking, but as I slowed, I confirmed it. Someone was following me. I turned around and there he was, a middle-aged man with a hood up over his head. He was smiling and staring at me, hands stuffed in his hoodie pockets. "How you doing?" he asked. I forced a smile and just said, "Hi," before quickly turning and walking faster. We were in the suburbs, so it wasn't uncommon to see people out walking, even late at night. But something about him felt wrong. I kept walking, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease. Every time I glanced back, he was still there, following me at a distance, maybe a little closer each time. I had to make several turns to get home, and each time I looked back, the man was still following me, as if he knew exactly where I was headed. I had about 20 minutes left to get to my house, and with every turn I made, the man was still there. I started texting my friends about the situation, trying to get help, but the man behind me spoke again. His voice was eerily calm as he said, "Isn't it such a nice night? Love this weather." I responded back with a short, "Yeah," trying to keep things casual, but inside I was panicking. I picked up the pace a bit, walking faster without wanting to make it obvious that I was running from him. But then he spoke again, his voice sending chills down my spine. "Are you from the neighborhood?" he asked. I kept my response short and firm. "No." He chuckled, and at that moment, I could feel my heart racing. I texted my friends again, asking one of the guys to come pick me up, but the boy I had been trying to avoid, Brandon, was on his way to get me. Then the man said something that completely changed everything. "I'm not going to hurt you. You live by the elementary school, right?" I turned around, my heart dropping. He had stopped in his tracks, still smiling, but now that smile seemed more sinister, more dangerous. I screamed, "Leave me alone," and took off running. My breath came in ragged gasps as I sprinted, desperate to put as much distance between me and him as I could. I could hear his footsteps chasing after me, getting closer with every second. I screamed bloody murder, yelling for help, hoping someone in the nearby houses would hear me. "Help me!" I screamed. "Help!" The man's nice guy persona shattered. He snarled, "Shut up, you little." His voice faded as I kept screaming. That was when I realized my screams had scared him off. He didn't want witnesses, and with the sound of people starting to wake up, he ran off into the darkness. The lights in nearby houses flickered on, and a couple came out to check on me. I explained everything as best as I could, barely able to catch my breath. Brandon arrived soon after, and he drove me home. It was only a minute's drive, but the weight of what had just happened still hung heavy in the air. When I got home, my mom wasn't there. She was out, and she wasn't answering my texts. I didn't want to be alone, so I invited Brandon to stay the night. I'm sure he was relieved to have an excuse to stick around, but he was supportive, and that helped. We stayed up talking, trying to shake off the unease of the night. But then we heard something. Footsteps. At first it was faint, but soon it was clear. Someone was circling the house. My room was upstairs, facing the backyard, and we heard the gate creak open. I froze. My mom would never enter through the backyard. Something was definitely off. I held back from shouting out "Mom," and instead just looked at Brandon. We didn't hear anything else, but then we both heard it, a man's voice. "I see you up there." My heart stopped. I gasped and stepped away from the window. Brandon yelled out, "We're calling the cops, you freak." That's exactly what we did. My fear was growing by the second. The fact that this man knew where I lived, where I was walking, it made my skin crawl. Brandon did most of the talking with 911, trying to keep things calm while I shook. The cops showed up soon after, their presence a relief, even if it didn't feel like enough. I felt a little safer just knowing someone was doing something about it. When my mom got home, she was just as shaken as I was. The police kept a car parked on the block for a few hours to deter the man or anyone else from returning. From that night on, I didn't walk at night. I was even scared to step into the backyard. My mom had our uncle install a security camera system. It wasn't subtle. They were all on display to make sure that man or anyone else knew we were prepared. Thankfully, that was the last time we encountered him. About a year later, my mom sold the house. She couldn't bear to see me living in constant fear. We never found out who the man was, and honestly, I don't think I want to know.